My name is Charly Shelton. I am the host of Make Believe, the art and storytelling of theme parks, coming to Amazon Prime as soon as we can, as soon as everything opens back up. We're hosting episode 1 of Parks Central today. This is going to be a new panel discussion style video cast and podcast where we talk about theme parks in the time of uncertainty of COVID, but also just in general, and what has always been the draw and what's going to draw us back once everything reopens. So I want to take a moment to thank everybody who is logging in to view this with us. If you have any questions for us, we're going to open it up for a Q&A a little bit later in the program. So go ahead and just type in your questions into the chat section here, and we will get to those in a minute. I'd like to introduce all of our panelists. We have Mike Sandoval from MUSE TV. We have Josh and Jenna from Resort TV 1, Norm from HorrorBuzz.com, and Kevin Perger from Defunctland. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Doing good.
Good, thank you.
Thanks for coming. So we're going to do, I guess, just kind of open-ended, talk about whatever kind of comes up. Let's start with why theme parks? Why have we all gravitated towards covering theme parks?
I mean, for us, it was with theme park. I'm sorry. For us, it was like, pretty natural. Jenna and I, we're brother and sister, which kind of makes us unique. We're one of the few brother and sister teams. A lot of people are husband and wife or boyfriend, girlfriend. But we started going to the parks when she was 4 and I was 5. So our parents took us there a lot. And they had their first date there. So we kind of like really have it in our family history, in our blood. So it just kind of became natural to start covering them, start taking videos of them, and then eventually start uploading. Jenna started watching vloggers that were already doing it, like Adam the Woo and Justice Guard. And then we were like, hey, we could do that. That would be fun. So that's kind of the short story of how we started.
Yeah.
And you guys are probably, I think, out of all of us, you guys are in the parks the most. You're out there, what, twice a week, 3 times a week?
At least twice, maybe 3. Yeah, depending on the week, for sure. Yeah, not anymore, of course. But.
So how about everybody? Norm, I've known you for a long time because of theme parks, because of Disneyland and everything else.
Yeah.
How long have you been going to theme parks, and why is this, especially for a horror site?
Well, yeah, I mean, valid question. I am a native of California. I was born in OC, born in Fullerton, and I lived for most of my adolescent life between Knott's and Disneyland. So I grew up not only going to the theme parks, but going to haunt. I mean, the first time I went to haunt I was 6 years old, and I went nuts for it. I totally loved it. So in Los Angeles, especially in the Southern California area, that's where theme parks and haunts originated, where Knott's came up with the idea in 1973 of, let's throw a Halloween party, and then they started promoting it as a separate ticket event, and that's why theme parks and haunts.
Very cool. Mike, I same kind of thing, but I've known Mike for quite a while because of theme parks, and I've been covering theme parks as a journalist since 2004, but you predated me in that by ways, right?
Not really, because I didn't start doing this till 2013, because Universal was the first park we ever covered professionally. But I met Norm through the theme park industry. I met you through theme parks, and but I grew up going to Disneyland and Knott's back when I was a kid, because Disneyland was that special treat once a year, and Knott's was a place that we used to go all the time because it was affordable. Even back to when they used to have this little lake across the street, and they used to have this railroad and boat, because we used to go there during the day, because if you can't go into the park, hey, that was the second best thing. So started taking photography of a lot of the theme parks over the years, and then when I started MUSE, eventually it became something that we went into and covered because I love it so much.
Cool. And one thing that I think we've all mentioned individually is the nostalgia. And that's, I know Kevin has based everything around these parks and attractions and everything that have since gone. Why did you go for the attractions that are gone rather than what's happening in the parks right now?
I grew up in the Midwest, so I didn't get to visit Walt Disney World or Disneyland nearly as much as some of the locals. So by the time I would go and come back, however many times that was, the attractions would be gone. Some of the ones that I had been on previously, I would find out about attractions that I never had the opportunity to ride.
Kevin,
are you?
Can you guys hear him?
Yeah, I can hear him.
I hear him.
You can hear me?
I'm not hearing him at all for some reason. I see him talking, but I can't hear him.
But can the stream hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
I can hear
think so.
Okay. Sorry. So so I gravitated towards the history because I wasn't able to go on a daily basis. And so that's kind of how I got started. And of course, there's a very rich history to theme parks and the theme park world in general that I've explored through my series on the history of parks around the world. Most often, I discuss Disneyland and Walt Disney World and Universal because they're kind of the pinnacles of the industry. But I just released an episode even today on just Magic Mountain, so it's always interesting to go on and talk about the entire industry because luckily with my because I'm doing history, I can kind of jump around while other like location based. I'm sure Resort TV 1, like it would probably be infeasible to like just go to every country like in the amount that you all do. And so like that's and I couldn't do that either. So it's kind of that being able to go to the past is almost more freeing in a way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's one of the benefits of it. But so yeah, that's why I gravitate towards theme parks.
And I noticed you've started doing a lot with TV as well. The old TV, the Jim Henson series and all the other defunct TV. Is that kind of the same function of traveling to the past?
Yeah. So with that, it's a lot of with the defunct TV, Jim Henson's kind of its own mini series. But with defunct TV in general, we discuss canceled television shows because there's a lot of nostalgia to it, but there's also a lot of reason and like why these things are created. Today we discussed that ad nauseum with like why new attractions are coming and why why is this being added to this park at this time, and those conversations were happening back then too. There just wasn't as much of a community surrounding it as it is now. So we kind of, at least there was, but not as well documented or online. So to kind of go back to the 80s and ask these same questions of like, oh, I wonder like the rumors of upcoming things or the TV show that got canceled, why did that get canceled? I think it's more answers than just nostalgia. So because like I said, I mean we have such a strong community around theme parks and media in general now, but these same kind of dramatic situations were happening in the past as well. So it's interesting to compare and contrast.
Well, and Kevin's right up our alley too, because we love, we don't cover it quite like he does. We don't, have time to make the amazing documentaries he does. But that's something, we've been going to the parks for so long. We were in the Midwest as well. So we kind of had the same experience with attractions being gone. That really hit home when you said that. I was even at the park when Horizons was just a carcass kind of sitting above it was such a sad thing to see as a kid, So I think, it's interesting, we watched like Martin Smith started making some of these documentaries really, really early, and that kind of inspired, me at the time, but I just didn't take the time to do it. And then Jenna kind of said, look at these guys making these vlogs on YouTube. We should do that. And I was like, that's kind of cool. We could try that sometime. But, it's neat just you just don't even think about it until somebody kind of pops the idea in your mind. So.
Well, what Resort TV, which you all do that I also really love is you actually have some of the captures from the resort channel. I pop those on like TV, like I watch more of that than some of the live content, even just because it's just like it just makes you feel there. Like stroll. I like the videos where you stroll through the parks because that's like another experience of like being there. But it's also kind of another experience of like actually pretending like your room is a resort. So that's also interesting.
And that's actually why we started, because I have an Apple TV in my bedroom and I was missing the parks one day. And I was like, I think if I put these Resort TV loops, like I captured them just to save them, but I think if I put these on YouTube, I could just play them right on the Apple TV and not have to worry about anything. And so then other people watched them too. So it kind of by accident that those got popular.
And just the fact that you have them at all is incredible for research, because when I'm going back and looking at how these things came about of the attractions or why they went away, it's also so much just looking at how Disney themselves was presenting them. And with a lot of these smaller attractions, they wouldn't make a commercial for Magic Carpets of Aladdin, but it would definitely have 2 or 3 minutes when it first debuted in one of these like hotel loops. So yeah, thank gosh you got some of those, because you have some vintage ones.
Oh yeah. And I actually had a friend when we started putting them up. I had a friend, just real quick. I don't want to monopolize the thing, but I had a friend who actually started sending me those. And once we started posting the current ones on there, he started sending me some of the older ones. He's like, I'm not going to do anything with these. Here you go. I captured some when we took a VCR. Jenna can tell you, we took a VCR to the parks and captured them because I just love them so much. But he had some even further back than I did. So that like the 1989, the 1992, 93, he sent me those. Like, here, post these up. Everybody will love these. So it's kind of cool the connections you make when you start posting that kind of content. People start giving you things freely. So it's kind of neat.
And it's great that this is becoming such a big part of the community. This content like this, that it's on YouTube now. I remember years ago having to go like mouse bits and the mice chat boards, find a single link, maybe something gets posted. Now you go on YouTube, it's all of it. So it's great that there's such interest for it, that everyone is willing to share it and bring it back out of those files that they've had for so long. That kind of brings me to my next question, is content creation. Like, we're all having trouble right now finding enough content to put up.
Charlie,
There's nothing
can
happen. All using
you hear
technology.
me?
Here it comes, and then it all just went.
We're losing you, Charlie. We can't.
we're losing you, Charlie.
We can't. We only hear about every other
We're
word.
going to open again.
I don't think he can hear us. We can only hear about every other word, Charlie.
Really?
Yeah.
I think what you said
I can
was
hear.
like, what are we
I
having
can hear
trouble
you guys
finding
all right.
content? Is that the question? So if that's the question, then me, no, personally, but
Yeah,
I
I think that's
understand why others.
What is it?
I think he's frozen. I don't even see his picture moving right now.
Great
He's
technical
about to
difficulties
sneeze.
for the first show.
We just need Elsa to come in and unfreeze him.
Yeah. Well, I think the question was like what was said was I think, are we having difficulties finding content to put up during this time? I think that's what the question was.
Okay.
So whoever wants to take that.
I know, for Josh and I, for me at least, I would go to the parks, a couple times a week, try to get some content for the next week. So yeah, for me, it is a little bit hard. Now our live streams, like Josh has said, well, I don't know if you said it now, but we've been still doing those every Friday. And Josh has a ton of content. You can take over, Josh, if you like.
Terabytes of content. And that's one of the things, the strolls Kevin mentioned. We do, I do all these strolls, and it actually has worked in the live streams because we're doing virtual live streams. So I'll put on a stroll and I'll stroll to Adventureland, and then we'll jump on Pirates of the Caribbean because it's right there. And then we'll jump on, Tomorrowland, we'll jump on the People Mover, and so on and so forth. So it's like as close as you can be to actually doing a live stream in the parks, which is what we kind of, that's how we kind of grew, with the live streams in the parks. So it's harder for sure. You just have to be more creative. We've also done like trivia streams, scavenger hunts. So I think it's neat to see a lot of creators get creative with what they can do. Now, like Kevin, your content doesn't depend as much on in-park stuff so you're kind of able to do kind of your thing. Or have you noticed any difficulties at all? Or are you pretty much just doing your thing like normal? I mean,
it's normal. If anything, I've had to kind of pick up the pace a bit just because, I have more time because I'm inside and everyone's inside, and I find that people are wanting more content, which is stressful, but that's more of a content creator question than a theme park question. People like you release an episode and they're immediately like, when's the next episode? I'm like, I know everyone's bored, but these things take a long time to make.
Right.
But yeah, no, my production isn't as nearly affected. If anything, like I said, it's going a little bit quicker because now that when I reach out to ask for footage, people are they're just on their emails, so they're like, yeah, sure. So I can get answers back a lot quicker and get podcast interviews easier. But yeah, I'm a very specific situation because I'm in the past. The past already happened. If there's footage of it, it's there. If it's not, it's not like But I imagine that a lot of people that don't have the back catalog you do are struggling.
Norm, how is it going for you?
Well,
Can everybody hear me now? Is that better?
yeah.
Yes.
Welcome back, Charlie.
Cool. Nothing like a live show.
Exactly. So Norm?
for myself, I mentioned previously that we're trying to get this
Hey,
show up and
Char-
running, trying to get it off the ground.
Charlie.
And during this time, I mean, we had everything set up, and now it's like I work for a newspaper as well. What?
Hold on.
It was on Norm's.
Say again?
Norm had the floor. Norm had the floor.
No, I still can't hear you. I don't know what's happening.
Let's see if he can hear us in the private chat.
Can you hear Norm if he's talking?
Yeah, let's go to private.
Can you hear me?
Norm, can you
Yeah.
continue?
Charlie, can you hear me?
No,
I can't hear Norm at all. I hear him talk. I see him talking, but I can't hear him at all.
No,
It's so weird.
Can you guys hear me?
yeah,
No, we hear you
yeah.
just fine, Norm.
Yeah.
We hear you perfectly.
I
This
don't know.
This is a
All right.
broadcast
Let
on
me try one more thing. Hold on.
troubleshooting tech.
Exactly.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. No, well, Norm, why don't you go ahead and answer
Norm,
the
go
question?
now.
Norm.
Go now.
No, continue.
I think he threw the camera across the room. Which is an understandable reaction.
Yes.
As far as Horrorbuzzz goes, we cover a multitude of things, not just theme parks, and not just in-person experiential things. We cover books, we cover video games, and we cover movies. And right now, people are starving for things that they can watch at home. And what's really interesting is the indie movie scene has really embraced the same day, theatrical run in VOD situation that's kind of playing out with Universal right now. And they've always been doing this direct-to-video release. So their business is it's booming right now because people need things to watch and people need things to do. As far as our video is concerned, we also have an archive of haunts and walkthroughs, even like 360 videos, VR videos that people can go in and experience. So while right now wouldn't exactly be the big time for covering haunts and everything, we cover other things throughout the year. Now, ask me in October or September, and I will have a much it's going to be a very different Halloween. So,
Especially in California. I mean, I think in Florida, we're probably going to be opened up sooner than you guys. Probably, wouldn't you agree?
oh, absolutely. But yeah, things are tricky.
Yeah.
Things are tricky out here.
Yeah. And
For
then
sure.
for us, I have a bunch of archive footage that we never use, so we're just holding on to it for the right time to start releasing things little by little. We did a ride video just to see how from my vacation at Walt Disney World, and just to try putting things out in addition to everything else that we covered. But it's just it's eventually going to get to the point where, with movies being down, TV series are down. There's not a lot of new content. We can't go to a theme park and go shoot something really quick, as Norm said. And then Halloween coming up, and that's a big thing in here in Southern California. There will be a time where we're going to have to generate or reuse content or do it in a different way. So it's a little scary for what's going on and what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually talking just before we got on this call. I was talking to a haunt in Utah that actually plans to open the end of the month. And I was talking to them about, because the restrictions there are going to be loosened. So they were telling me all about their procedures, their precautions, how they're treating the guests, the actors. It's a completely different ballgame now.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we're pretty curious about now that we're coming in. There's so many things that we're supposed to open this summer, and so many things that were supposed to be coming out. And now construction with Halloween coming, usually start what, Norm, in June?
Oh yeah, I mean, like they begin conceptualizing during the previous year, you know, and by January, the like Universal and by January, all of the haunts know what they're going to be doing for that year. And so then, you know, they have their plans and they start their builds. Some haunts leave their stuff up year round because it's in a place that guests don't go, you know, and so they can go in and zhuzh it up, give it a once over, and if it's cleared by, you know, the fire marshal, okay. Yeah, so it's a really interesting time right now because we have yet to hear a single thing from any of the major theme parks with regards any announcements. We should have, like, in 2019, they had already announced a few haunts at this point, or a few mazes, a few houses for Universal, and we don't have anything because nobody knows what's happening.
And can everyone hear me now? Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Okay, Charlie, take over. I got to step out real quick, but I'll be right back.
All right. So do you think with the haunts specifically, I know a lot of it's done at home. They design a lot of this stuff beforehand and then build it off site and then bring it in. If we get these parks up and running, like they're saying, you know, their earliest timetable sometime in June, do you think that's enough time to really put on a haunt, or is it going to be scaled back no matter what, just because of how late they are now?
Okay, well, you know, I'm speaking about specifically California because that's where I am, but it's also a very cautious state, and we just don't want to move forward unless it's safe and the right thing to do. So as far as actually building and producing, that's not so much the thing. It's because the future is so nebulous. You don't know, you know, how things are going to ease up. You don't know if there's going to be a second wave. So what I definitely see them doing is just keeping an eye on things, and we'll know pretty soon, within the next month or so, maybe by June, if build starts at Knott's, and if, you know, I have heard that build has already started at Universal Orlando, but again, that's a different situation. Regardless, haunt's not going to look the same this year. It's not going to be the same Halloween. It's going to be, if I predict that if things do open up, they will be 50% capacity and measured guests, measured groups, things like that, at least this year, because you need to be able to plan for these things way ahead of time.
Yeah.
And there aren't any answers right now during this planning period. So I don't know. I have no answers, but I can tell you what I think would happen if everything went a certain way.
And I think this, you know, as a larger issue with theme parks is the restrictions once we do come back. This, I think we're going to see enough restrictions that it's going to have to change the way theme parks are run, kind of in the same way we had a Band-Aid solution after 9/11 with metal detectors everywhere, and we never quite evened that out. And I was reading something that Eddie Sato wrote about how it needs to be taken guest forward, and that if we do the same thing where we keep these Band-Aid solutions to a much larger problem, it's going to make theme parks unworkable, especially at the price they're going to be charging and everything else. You can't, operating at reduced capacity by half for a year, or reduce capacity even within attraction vehicles and within shows. It'll be doable for a year if it's a short-term thing. But if we turn this into a normal thing that we always have to stay 6 feet apart, 3 feet apart, just in case. We have to have temperature scans so that we don't have an outbreak. I think that's really going to impact how theme parks are visited and therefore how they're run from this point going forward. And I just really hope they start thinking, as we climb out going down the curve, I hope they start thinking about guest experience instead of making every theme park feel like LAX.
LAX is fun.
Oh, you're the one who thinks that. Okay.
Check out my vlog from LAX. Every day, just strolling through LAX. Yeah, I don't, with these news restrictions, and this might be controversial, and I'm not trying to put anybody down that would end up going under these guidelines that they're proposing, but it doesn't sound like a good time. Like it sounds like it sounds very paradoxical to me that, like, I don't know, because I'm going to follow them. It's not like I'm going to break restrictions, because I obviously want to do what's best for everybody. And if they say it's okay to go under these certain guidelines, if I'm going to be going to places that are like formed for escapism and for fun and for levity, and they have been transformed in a way that is constantly reminding me of a global pandemic, for me, that defeats a little bit of the purpose. And I would actually wait a few months to maybe hopefully some of those restrictions lessen up as is necessary. Like I like anybody can go. That's just my own personal opinion, because that's not what they're there for me. I don't want to be reminded of the outside world, because if that's the case, if everybody's having to, as they should, and I'm not trying to put down the restrictions because they're important, it's just a matter of, like, that's kind of, it's odd. Like, they were talking about 6 feet in between people in the queue, and I mean that made me literally laugh. I was like, how are you going to do that?
Well, you can. Here's what's weird about that. You can. Everybody knows what the queue lines look like. You can do it front to back, but you can't do it side to side. And it's not like the virus can't move sideways. So it is kind of an interesting. First of all, I think we talked about this before. There's going to be a certain amount of risk for anybody that goes to the parks or goes out and does anything, and people have to decide if that's right for them or not. But like Kevin said, I think if I was not a local here and an annual pass holder, I would definitely wait until things were open. Like, I'm not going to pay a couple $1,000s for a vacation if I can't watch, there's talk about maybe there not being fireworks, maybe not being parades just due to social distancing. So I would wait until everything was closer to 100%, so that I'm going to really get my money's worth for that vacation. Plus, I'm going to get the experience, like Kevin said, that I really am used to, that escapism from the parks, So yeah, as a local, and to go cover the parks and to go, really do some live streams and vlogs, sure, it's fine. And if I can't ride everything, I can wait. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I agree 100%. Yeah, if we weren't local, we lived, in another state or far away, I wouldn't visit during this time. That's for sure.
And do you think this is going to affect attraction design for the future? In that, this situation happened once. What if it happens again? And not commenting anything whatsoever on the likelihood one way or another, I have no idea. But just thinking about the what if they need to do it. Experiences like Rise of Resistance, where you're getting up close and personal, kind of things like that, would have to be almost immediately counted out just because it becomes infeasible. What do you think about that type of attraction redesign? Is this something that we're going to see become as commonplace as, electric vehicles? I
don't think so. I think this is a very hopefully temporary situation that, these, if we're looking at historically, the nature of pandemics and how they come and go, there's a very decades gap in between the major ones. And even if there is another one of this nature, gosh forbid, we don't know how that's going to be transmitted. And we don't know how to even accommodate for that. We know how this one is, and we don't know everything about it even now. But the next one that comes up, it's certainly not going to be transmitted exactly the same. So if we designed a COVID safe attraction, that doesn't guarantee that even if there is a pandemic, whether it's 5, 10, 40, 100 years from now, that it's going to be transmitted in the way that attraction design. And I just think at that point, they would, those areas, those places would have to cease to exist. I don't think there's a way to accommodate that, which I hope isn't the case, because I rather like those places, obviously. So, although it would give me a lot more topics to cover. But that's never the goal with. So.
I guess my biggest concern is the fact, and Norm knows this because we see this a lot, and I don't know how it is in Florida, when they have the screens in front of each room when you go through a haunt, and they're plastic, and going through those, I just thought about it like a couple days ago. It was just
no, that's not going to be a thing. I can almost guarantee that's not going to be a thing this year. Upholstery thread that dangles and hits you in the face, that's not going to be a thing this year. And it's going to be different.
Is it something that only happens here in Southern California with those little draperies?
No. That's
plastic thing, or is that in Florida as well?
That happens everywhere.
No, it's in Florida. Now Jen and I, it's kind of funny. We're like we like Universal, but we've not ever been to Horror Nights. It's just not really our cup of tea. One of these days, my friend keeps telling me how well done it is, and so one of these days I'm gonna go and experience it. But we just haven't. So, but I have seen videos. What's that?
We prefer Mickey's Not So Scary.
That has a place.
Yeah,
I also am not a huge.
But yeah, you should definitely go check it out.
Yeah,
I'm also not a huge horror guy in that way, but I've been, and I enjoy them a lot. It's to the point though that I don't have the qualifications to rate it as good. So all the houses kind of blend together. It's like, yeah, that was terrifying. Is that like, was it well done? I assume. Like the Stranger Things one was a few years ago. Was especially well done. Although all the kids were definitely like college girls with baseball caps.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I remember really from Horror Nights is being terrified. And every time one of those Stranger Things kids, I was like, you're just like a UCF kid with a baseball cap on.
and on that same note, just thinking about, like, we have a couple friends who were scare actors at Horror Nights too, and so talking to them about their experiences doing that is interesting. But my thought is, how can you be a social distancing scare actor? I'm not that scared of you if you can only get 6 feet away from me with your chainsaw, or whatever. I don't know. What do you think, Norm? What is that? Is that a concern? I mean, I'm not as scared of you if you have to stay over here.
No. Yes, it's definitely a concern. And if some guy's standing in the corner going boo, it's not going to get you.
Right.
I think that they are definitely going to be re-engineering the art of a scare and what gets close to you and what does not, and what distracts you and what does not. I sound like a broken record, but it's going to be re-engineering the entire situation due to the fact that we can't have close proximity.
Probably a lot more effect gags, like manually sprung mechanical gags instead of performers, because you can keep them behind a sheet.
Right.
So, and that's fine. I always like that.
You can
kind of
easily
stuff.
hide a mask or something like that. Or you can make it work with the costume. But yeah.
But at that point, what is that doing if you still have the conga line of people going through these houses?
You don't have the conga line.
You don't? You send them in one at a time finally?
Yeah. The one in Utah that I just spoke with, they are cutting down to about 25% capacity for the event. They're giving people very specific times that they can go through. And they have to go through with the people they came in with. They cannot go through with strangers. Actors are staying at the very least 6 feet apart or 6 feet away from each other. And what's even stranger is that they can't have rehearsals right now. So they're doing a lot of ahead of time training on video. And then they will get on site. But when they get on site, they're not going to be able to get near each other. So it's a fascinating look into what might be coming.
Well, and I think for theme parks, just a regular theme park, you're also looking at probably no or very limited character interaction, because especially with face characters, I mean, while you can't put Cinderella out there and then tell the little 3-year-old girl that she can't give Cinderella a hug. I mean, so so I think that's a consideration too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think no matter how thick and awesome your face mask is, a Goofy helmet is always going to be more protective than anything they're wearing in a hospital. So,
well, and that's true. If you're Goofy or Mickey, you're probably okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the face characters, even Gaston, you're just not going to be able to do that, I don't think, for a while.
Yeah. And that's across the board, even for cast members, like I was saying about Rise of Resistance, and without any kind of spoilers, there are opportunities to get close to cast members in a role within the ride. And it kind of, what got me the most about that was when confronted with that situation, it stirs something within you of like, how would you handle an oppressive government? If someone was really getting in your face and acting like the Empire, something happens inside you, and you either put your head down and comply, or you're ready to sock this college kid in the face. And it made that experience so much more real because it's so immersive. And that's something that if they can't get close to you, if they're standing on a stage, 6-10 feet away speaking to the room, it wouldn't have the same impact. And I think that's something that is going to be lost in that and the face characters and a lot of other situations.
And there's a comment that came in that actually is a pretty good comment as well.
Yeah.
Let me bring that up. What if the person before you hugs Mickey?
Right.
I thought of that. Yeah. I mean, I'm a germaphobe anyways, but with this, it's even like 10 times worse. So it's like, I mean, that's a good question.
So that may right there, that comment right there, Gina, that may actually, eliminate character interaction, not because the character is in danger, but because everybody else is, it's kind of a contamination issue for that point. So yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone has been to a theme park where you see that one kid with boogers coming down the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Eyes are crying.
I mean, there was that.
You just like, it's
Talking about
already
scared.
bad. Yeah.
That is pretty scary.
That's scarier than any Halloween haunt you'll ever see.
So I guess it's a good time to go to some of those comments and questions. I have my lovely assistant has been recording some questions for us. So, and if you guys have seen any in the chat crawl, let me know. We have a question here. We have one from Captain Rutger. VR theme parks might be the ride of the future.
Good question.
So that's Kevin, I know you had mentioned something in your channel a while back about making a defunct land, like an actual virtual theme park. Is that something that you're still exploring?
Yeah, we got it going on. We're done with one of the rides. I probably could release that video any day now of a 360. We've been working on 20,000 Leagues, and we've finally completed the full ride. And then we're also looking at America Sings, the old Disneyland attraction, and doing other stuff. And yeah, we mapped out the entire first, because it's defunct land split into seasons. And season 1 is a park in itself for organization purposes. So we've mapped out that park, and a lot of it's been recreated virtually, or at least the first land in the center hub with the icon with the sorcerer's hat. So yeah, you can walk around and you can ride the ride. I mean, our years of work will result in about 10 minutes of fun for you, but yeah, it's fun. It's more of like just kind of a proof of concept and something we've been working on. It's a bunch of volunteer artists that have been doing it in their free time. So yeah, we've been doing that. Virtual theme parks as a whole, though, are totally different. Mine would be very much you. I could not see that being. I don't know how to put this. The only reason what we made is fun and interesting is because it is a recreation of something that exists. And also specifically the ride we did, 20,000 Leagues, is a very visual ride. It's all, you're just looking, versus like, Big Thunder Mountain. I mean, there's 360 videos of that. Do you all do 360 videos?
No.
We have some. We have one of we have, I don't know, Big Thunder, but we have some of several different attractions. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's that replaces the experience a little bit. That technology still has a long ways to go. But
Yes,
yeah. So.
the quality's much lower overall than regular video, but I think that's true. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have seen, there are other virtual theme park creations out there, and they're mostly, like Kevin said, they're done for fans. They're not a for-profit creation or anything like that. But there is a guy on Facebook who's trying to recreate the 1982 version of Epcot that he's been able to walk around. Horizons has been recreated virtually by a guy, so you can walk around. You can even walk around inside the ride. The old Journey into Imagination has been recreated. We showed that on our stream the other night. So it's really cool.
That's cool.
I mean, it's neat what people can do with a lot of time on their hands. But as far as people paying to go to a virtual theme park, I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there really a market for that? I mean, for fun, sure, but is there a market for that over going to the real thing when the pandemic's over?
I still think that there is.
Okay.
I do. Because there are a lot of people that can't make it to theme parks.
Good point. Good point.
A lot of people that have circumstances, are immunocompromised or bedridden or just can't go. I think that there's a market there.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good point.
And also, like you mentioned about the 1982 Epcot, you can go to a park that maybe you can't go to anymore physically at all. And, especially for things like Journey into Imagination, when you go and see what they have now, and then you're like, oh, well, that's sad.
I roll.
Yeah. I went to Disney World the first time a couple of years ago, and I had intentionally avoided the ride through of Journey into Imagination for years because I'm like, this is the important one. I don't want to see it on YouTube. I want to experience it firsthand. And I went on it, and I was like, this is what everyone's raving about? This is Figment's a skunk? This is so lame. Why is this important? And then I went back and found out, because I had avoided everything for so many years, and found out that, I missed it. And so luckily I've seen it a couple of times on YouTube. But things like that, or, the 20,000 Leagues ride, I don't think any of these things will necessarily replace going to a real theme park flat out, but it's something that gives another option for something that maybe you can't go to physically, either for, distance or time. And like the Disneyland Adventures Xbox game, I just walk around for hours. I don't even do anything. I don't play the mini games. It's just nice to feel like I'm in the park again for a little while it's all closed down. So things like that, I think, do have a separate category, but almost as valuable as a real theme park.
Yeah. And
it would probably only be like $5 to get in instead of $100. So that's
there you go.
Right there,
Well, and I have to apologize on behalf of all Epcot fans that the first version of Imagination you experienced was that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was shocking, and kind of it put a damper on that part of the day, because I already knew about Horizons, and I was like, I really wish I could have gone on that, but I knew it was gone. So you go in with managed expectations, and this one just did not satisfy. The rest of the park was great.
Yeah.
Epcot's my favorite park down there, but other than Journey into Your Imagination.
I agree that drinking around the world is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, does anybody have any final parting thoughts or questions?
Looks like Molly Apple Marie has a question here in the chat.
Okay, shoot.
And she says, do you think the parks would shift their hours of operation, like you could buy a ticket for Disney morning or ticket for evening? And that brings the question of, do you think they will shift the expense? Like, are they going to charge full price for a ticket if there's no fireworks at the end of the night? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Of course they are. It's Disney.
Yeah. And they need money now more than ever.
They're going to charge you more for a more intimate experience. I don't, and I hate putting this out there, because maybe I have to assume they've already thought of this, but they could only stand to make more money during this situation by turning visiting the park into nothing but a premium experience and charging top dollar. Have you met Disney fans? They're ravenous, and they're going to pay it.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
Right.
I actually suggested that they do this, and I got a lot of backlash for some reason. Probably because it sounded like it would be more money, but I said split the day, and I tweeted this a long time ago before they even started doing because they just introduced before everything went nuts. They introduced their after noon pass, like after space noon, like if you came in after noon or whatnot. It was maybe after 4, something like that. They had it for Epcot for a while as like an annual pass option for Florida residents, but then they introduced that, what was it called? It was the like late riser or something like that, where you could buy a ticket and you could only go into the park after a certain time. And I honestly think that the best move, given the situation, is going to be to split the day in 3, and you buy either a morning ticket, an afternoon ticket, or a night ticket. And the night ticket might have fireworks, the afternoon ticket might have the parade, and you can choose between those things.
Mm-hmm.
But it would honestly, given this ecosystem of that resort specifically, it would result in a better park experience. They've already started doing this. They've blocked out 4 hours every night cycling through their parks, like with the after hours events that they've just blown, and they are nothing. They're nothing more. They're less than being at the park during an actual day, like because the restaurants usually aren't open besides a few quick service locations. The characters aren't out except for those few special ones they bring out if it's themed. So I think that was a pilot test to maybe what if we split our crowds in 3? You get on everything 3 times as fast. But you would only be able to be in the park for a third of the time. So, and especially given the situation, that would help with lowering the transmissions and lowering the crowds.
The question then is, what do you do with annual pass holders?
Yeah, give them you get one choose a morning after. That's a whole nother tier, right? They'll be like, if you pay $30,000, you can have unlimited access. But if you're doing
price of a new car, you can have it.
Don't put it out there because they will do it. Because that's the one thing, like here at Disneyland. Because when I experience Walt Disney World, it's so vast and spread out. Whereas with Disneyland, one of the biggest problems over the years, and I'll say it because Disney doesn't invite me anyway, so I'll say it. The biggest problem here has always been that they wanted to lower down and get the annual pass holders, the number of annual pass holders reduced. So they raised the prices of the tickets, which pushed more people into annual pass holders because it was cheaper to pay month to month than it was to buy a single ticket, which caused this big old calamity. And it was just something that there's so many annual pass holders here at Disneyland that literally, if they never sold a ticket, they'll fill it up every single day. But how is this going? I'm curious, like, how is this going to work with the annual pass holder, with the amount of tickets being sold, the prices, and everything like that, where it's going to be to the point where now they finally got this pandemic gave Disney what they always wanted to do, and charge a premium price in order to get into Disneyland and California Adventure the way they've been wanting to.
A more premium price.
Premium. Yeah, it's already $200 for a park hopper now, something like that.
Yeah.
So that's already kind of a premium. And I was just 10 days before the shutdown. I bought my first annual pass in a long time because I was like, let's go. We're gonna go to Disneyland all the time, and we're gonna take our kid, and it's gonna be a nice experience for him, taking all the pictures and everything before he's 3, when we have to pay for him, and then we're never going again. But we're going to get in as much as we can in the next 3 years so that we can take the pictures and be like, look, no, you went, you're fine. We didn't. But now, it's all shut down, and the program's just a mess. And the little bit of leniency that they had, like with the Flex program and all these different things, after canceling so many of the locals-based options for the passes, it's just going to tighten down even further and make it almost unlivable, which is kind of going full circle back to what Roy Disney's initial thought is you can charge as much as you want, people will come. And that was a point of contention between Roy and Walt when developing Disneyland, and we see how Roy didn't win, but it feels almost like it's coming full circle back to that same idea of what he wanted in the very beginning.
Well, and what's interesting this summer, Disneyland actually, when Galaxy's Edge opened this past summer at Disneyland, we were there, and everybody thought it was just going to be swamped, but they did that reservation thing. Plus, they blocked out all but the most expensive passes, and they really made some huge moves to take that down. And I've got vlogs and videos. When we went to Disneyland, I thought, well, we're going to see Galaxy's Edge. I guess we probably won't get to ride a whole lot. We probably won't get to do very much. It's just going to be mobbed. It was like the least busy I've ever seen Disneyland. Haunted Mansion was like 10 minutes in the middle of the day. I just wrote stuff over and over and over again. So it almost backfired on them, because then the story was nobody's going to Galaxy's Edge, because it's kind of how they managed it.
Yeah. And that was a huge deal for all of us LA journalists, because it was the combination of, oh, it's going to be so busy. Oh, everyone's so afraid. But then also limiting the kind of coverage they have, so that you're only seeing bits and pieces here on like Instagram and some of the other blogs and stuff. But like LA Times got cut off of their list. And so then when LA Times was finally brought back in, they did the entire Sunday section of just scathing reviews. So they changed the system and angered some people. And it kind of, between that and their own hype, it all backfired together. And, a lot of us just sitting back and watching it all happen. It doesn't shock me, but it's kind of sad, because I really wish it would have been that big, huge success for them, so that they'd have a little bit of that buffer. They were already hurting going into the pandemic, and now it's even more so. And, Bob Chapek was in charge very briefly, and I know he wanted to cut a lot of the spending and everything already. Now it's going to be even more intense. It'll probably be a long time before Disneyland gets another ride. Because they don't get rides nearly as often as some of the other parks, especially in Asia and in Florida. And so it's going to be a very long time before we get anything other than Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. That's already going. But after that, I don't expect to see a new ride for at least 10 years.
Yeah, and that's the one thing, like, I don't know, Norm may have noticed too, is that when the lower tier pass holders were blacked out, if you went to Knott's on certain days, Knott's Berry Farm was super, super packed sometimes on those days. And I love Knott's. The food at Knott's Berry Farm is just amazing. And I love Knott's. And that's something that's really cool.
I almost looking back at the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge thing, I almost wonder if there was no way for Disney to win in that regard. Because had they managed the crowds a little less, the place would have been packed and people would have been complaining it was too crowded. They managed message and expectation and crowds to such an extent that it made it empty. So I don't know.
I think it's also just,
I'm going to give Disney any credit, but it's like, was there a way out?
I think it also combines with just the general lukewarm reception to that land in general. They were expecting a much more well-received, and that's just a whole nother conversation. It's extremely interesting that it's an extremely interesting land, because I think it was a bold choice artistically to go with a planet that no one recognizes and create your own story. Like, that's so great. I'm so glad they had the guts to do that. But that also, like, my pride that they did something so unique does not blind me to the fact that it was a horrible mistake. Like, and so it just didn't bring out the people. Like, and sometimes that's the case. Just because it was a bold idea, I think some people are like, oh, they should never have done Tatooine because, like, it was so much cooler. It's like, yeah, it was cooler, but not to the masses. So, like, it was a perfect storm of creating this big land, way overhyping it, limiting the amount of people that could go in, and also just under delivering, not to mention
and not even
half opening it. Yeah, half opening it.
I think the stories would have been a little bit different, since Falcon is just a simulator. It's neat, but I think that if Rise had opened when the land opened, probably there would have been a warmer reception, because Rise is just such a cool attraction.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
In Disney's defense, there's a book about Black Spire Outpost that they put out in between the opening of the land and the opening of Rise of Resistance that fleshes it all out and makes it really cool. The land is really, really cool. And once you understand what's actually happening and have something to place it within Star Wars, then it's like, oh, this is a cool Star Wars land, and you understand where it's all coming from. And the book is great. The audiobook is one of the best audiobooks I've ever heard. I mean, it's great. I've read it a couple of times, and it brings it more alive. But you can't expect the general public, who maybe is only kind of into Star Wars and like, I know the Millennium Falcon, but that's where it stops. You can't expect them to go and read one of the Star Wars novels and invest in that literature to be able to enjoy the land. Because
not only can you not expect them, I think that's kind of, I mean, to say that like, oh, it's, if you read the book, then this makes it good. Finally, it's like, well, then why didn't you just make it good?
Yeah.
Why did you make me read a book to make it eventually good? Why didn't you just make it good before that? You know,
you didn't get the same complaints about the Harry Potter, the Wizarding World, because it was, you go to Hogwarts,
it's such a localized story, and I mean that's a totally like completely. I know that's really off topic, but yeah, it's so those locations. All 7 movies happen in the same one location. It's very convenient.
It was easier. It was way easier to do Harry Potter since the locations were way less. But that's why it was more warmly received, I think.
Yeah. And also, I think because it's, there's enough storytelling there within Harry Potter to where even if you've only kind of half referenced the movies, you're at least still getting like, oh, okay, this is kind of a pub. We have stuff. We have those shadows projected on the ceilings. We have magical things happening all around. We have more storytelling elements versus Star Wars Land is more like Animal Kingdom or Epcot, like the streets of Morocco and Epcot, where it's supposed to be immersive. It makes you feel like you're there and you feel like you've stepped onto an alien planet. But like, I have a concept of what Morocco is more than what Batu is. And so you don't really need storytelling from Morocco the same way you need it from Star Wars.
It also just totally, I mean, it seeps into every aspect of that, the effectiveness. Forced perspective doesn't work if you don't know what the real thing's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what giant alien spires, black spires are supposed to look like. So I can't tell you if I'm being tricked into thinking they're taller than they are. They look exactly how tall they are in real life versus the world of Avatar, where I've seen the movie. I know how high up those are supposed to be. I know they're supposed to be floating. I have so much visually going on in my already brain that when I eventually see them, I'm like, oh yeah, those look huge because I've seen them. But like, if you're like, hey, I made this forced perspective burnt tree, be like, I have nothing to base that off of. Is that normal? Is that the recommended height for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I enjoy the land overall. I understand why the general public did not latch onto it the same way they did Harry Potter World.
Yeah. So we are at 57 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's about everything. So before we go, I want to say thank you again, and we'll just go around the room. Time for a shameless plug. Let everybody know what you've got going on. Mike, why don't you start us off?
Hey, if you want to follow us, we're at MUSE TV, which you're watching this now. And check us out. We have a podcast that we do every couple of days, every week. And we have a special guest next Friday. And we're celebrating on Monday Star Wars Day. So check it out.
All right. Resort TV 1, you guys go ahead.
Jenna, go for it.
All right, so we go live every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, usually at a Disney park. Of course, we're doing it virtually at home right now. And we have new vlogs every Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday.
All right.
YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Sorry.
Cool. Yeah, and we will post all of the tags and everything below. So be sure to follow everyone on Instagram and YouTube and Friendster, whatever. I don't know. Norm, go ahead.
Horrorbuzz.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we cover everything horror from movies, games, books, haunts, and even family-friendly stuff. So, yeah, come visit Horrorbuzz and find something that scares you.
All right. Kevin.
Yep, you can find me at youtube.com/defunctland or just search Defunctland on your local neighborhood social media platform. I'm sure something will come up, if not me, an imposter that will send you to the right direction. So
Very good.
And And I'm Charlie. I'm hosting a TV show, Make Believe, the art and storytelling of theme parks, coming to Amazon Prime and your other favorite TV show dispersal places. So with that, I just want to say thank you all very much for coming to the inaugural episode of Parks Center, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.